Hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. This week we are going to cover Christmas coming a bit early for some Western Kentucky tornado survivors. We're going to dive in on more charter school shenanigans in Northern Kentucky, and we'll learn more about what the crowded GOP governor's primary might look like. Then we'll discuss the state of union and labor organizing and why sick days are such a big deal with blue-collar writer and friend of the show, Matt Alley. And then we're going to wrap it up with an important and different call to action. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? We saw what happened on November 8th, right? The GOP rode a wave of gerrymandered districts to build an even larger supermajority in Frankfort. If we are ever going to match up the sensibilities of a Commonwealth who voted to uphold abortion rights with the political party that stands for abortion rights, our state needs you off the sidelines and onto the field. If you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, join Progress Kentucky and support our campaign to turn our Commonwealth purple. It is easy, folks. Just follow us on social media, share out our videos, posts, and podcasts with your friends and family. Spread the word that we're tired of the GOP ignoring the needs of regular folks in Kentucky. We think our Commonwealth is worth fighting for. All right, now it's time to check in with our co-hosts. Let us know who you are, where you are, what does your protest sign say today? And you there on the internet, you also, we would like to hear what your protest sign says. You should write that in the chat. And if it's a good one, we'll put it up on the screen. Unless you're listening to this as a podcast. So my sign, I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, which is, of course, a deed-restricted community. Deed-restricted community, which means you really can't have any fun in that community. Although, I just heard from our neighborhood Facebook group, the first solar panels are going to be coming in on our neighborhood, which sad that it's taking this long, but, working your way through a homeowners association that wasn't really keen to allow them, take some time. But I'm proud and glad of that pioneer here in Childsburg. All right, so my sign says, don't wait for your boss to get scared by 3 ghosts to get a raise. Join a union. And then I'm going to the guy who's laughing. Nate, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Oh, what an honor. I get to go second. Hey, folks, it's Nate Orshan coming live and direct at you from Kitson, my lovely home here in lovely South Frankfort, Kentucky. And my sign would say, if it were long enough, hey, ho, ho, hyper-extremist paleo-conservative politicians have got to go. Back to you, Aaron.
What was it? Wait, what were they? You got to put that in the chat so I can actually.
Extremist paleo-conservative.
Paleo-conservative.
Yes, like their views they may as well be cavemen.
Gotcha.
As it were.
Gotcha. Isn't that a diet too? So is that a diet where you just eat conservative politicians?
Yeah. It could be.
That's gross. Yeah. That's gross. Doug, save us. What do you got?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about eating any politicians. Oh my goodness, what a horrible thought. Yeah, I'm Doug Price coming to you from Cynthiana, Harrison County. Like a lot of other cities, we got a lot of lights in and out of the city, but if you get a chance, you should go to Mustard Seed Hill in Millersburg, Kentucky. They have just a beautiful bunch of Christmas decorations there, and it's quite a lovely setting. My sign says, I got to hold it up. I always got to hold it up. Bring on the General Assembly.
Nice.
Bring it on.
Fired up and ready to go. Take on. Because I'm a little more like, you guys could just take your time. Because I got a feeling you're just not going to do anything useful when you get together. Why rush into it? But Doug is hankering for a fight. I love it. And hey, is Millersburg? Is that in Harrison County?
No, it's not in Harrison County. It's in Bourbon County. But I can talk about Bourbon County also.
Apparently you can. This is the first, and I'd like to make a mark in the record, the permanent record, show number 92. Took him to show number 92 to discuss a county besides Harrison County. Good to know. All right, so let's get into the news of the week because we have some news this week. The first story we want to bring you is that Christmas is coming to Western Kentucky tornado victims. Governor Andy Beshear announced that the Team Kentucky Fund, is sending $1,000 checks to everyone who got some FEMA help. A lot of insured homeowners with uninsured losses. Not every insurance policy covers tornadoes and the full range of impacts. So when you go through something like that, it really is, you're going to get hit with a lot of expenses dealing with, digging out and rebuilding that, people don't plan for. Right. So this is good. Glad to see the governor kind of stepping up, which means they had some resources in that fund, which is great. There's about 10,000 checks worth about $10 million in total. Whoa, that's some cheddar there. Way to go, Team Kentucky. Of course, those tornadoes were over a year ago. The story is just being told, right? The year revision and memorial, looking back at what people have gone through and how it's gone for them. The stories I've read, they really do underscore that not everyone's been able to rebuild, and it's going to take some time. So I am certain that a lot of folks' burden will feel a lot lighter with an additional $1,000 in the bank, especially as Christmas is coming. So really, I think, this is something that's useful. I did see on the Twitter machine, way to buy votes, Governor Beshear, which that's a little cynical. I will say though, it's been a year, so take some time to get those resources flowing, I guess. Also, we had a whole lot of folks go through a whole lot of horrific impacts through natural disasters on the other side of the state. Do they have to wait a year? I don't know what the story is there, but clearly the Eastern Kentucky flood victims are I'm sure looking at those $1,000 checks with some some interest for sure. I don't know, guys, what do you think about this one?
I'll jump in. I want to also mention that this is an amazing effort on the part of the governor, and I also want to talk about his great work in Eastern Kentucky area hit hard by flooding. The flooding in that area is compounded by the dearth of flat ground in the area, with people rebuilding in flood-prone areas, only to repeat the situation. I just saw a news article recently where Andy is negotiating in 4 different counties to try to purchase, I'm going to call it higher ground land for building housing on that land that will certainly help this awful situation. So Andy's always forward thinking.
No, I think that is smart. That's the toughest part of rebuilding, especially in an area that has these kind of vulnerability to repeated losses, right? Because then the insurance gets a lot harder to come by if these 100-year floods happen every 5 years or so, and that expense would be an ongoing one, which is the cost of the flood insurance and the home insurance. So it's a very challenging situation to deal with when people are trying to rebuild and you're trying to move them out of harm's way. I say that from kind of watching firsthand down in New Orleans, where I lived for a couple of decades through Katrina and post Katrina, and really is challenging to get people out of the way, even if that's the kind of maybe the smart or rational thing to do. It doesn't mean it's the the thing that people want to do, right? And it's hard to kind of give up ties to land, and even if it's challenging land to live on. So I appreciate the fact that he's going there and trying to have that kind of that make that opportunity available for folks, and I hope that people do that he's successful and folks take him up on it. But I bet those people, if he's talking to them about, hey, find you some other land to build on, I bet they're like, hey, where's my $1,000? But I don't know. Anyway, Nate, anything you wanted to add on this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to take a cynical, hyper-partisan view on it and talk about electioneering and this, that, and the other. But let's be clear, even though all of us here are very passionate progressives, even if it were Matt Bevin in office doing this, we would still be applauding it, because it's just a decent thing, a good thing, a righteous thing to do for these people. And and I can't help but think that if it were up to the conservative supermajority General Assembly, they would do something helpful like, hey, We'll give them all tax cuts. Yeah, that'll fix it.
Right, exactly. All right, so we're going to move on. We got an interesting story on an issue that we have covered for quite some time, back to last General Assembly. Even did like a special emergency episode of Kernels of Truth to dig in on it. Doug is going to tell us a little bit about what's going on with some Northern Kentucky charter school shenanigans.
Sure. Yes, like Aaron said, we have reported on this in the past. And Northern Kentucky University has recently, like yesterday, declined to serve as authorizer, which would be in an oversight and sponsoring capacity for a charter school. First, I want to provide some texture as to how we got to this cluster fork. In an earlier COT, we provided details about House Bill 9, which created a permanent funding mechanism for charter schools, which are publicly funded but privately operated. SEEK funds would be given to private for-profit schools. Charter schools have been legal in Kentucky since 2017, but none have opened, largely because of a lack of funding. House Bill 9 will likely make it easier for charters to open in Kentucky. The bill also required Jefferson County Public Schools and a group in Northern Kentucky to each approve and oversee a charter school by July 2023. Coming right up. Why was Northern Kentucky spelled out specifically? Is there a connection to the fact that Northern Kentucky Republican legislator Kim Banta's husband is working on a project that would establish an upscale community, including an urban academy in the Northern Kentucky area? Is it interesting at all that urban academy is specifically mentioned in the bill? That was then, and this is now. The bill created a mechanism for Northern Kentucky University to be involved in the approval of the Northern Kentucky public charter schools. Unfortunately, NKU was not asked if this is something the school wanted to do. Can you imagine that? It does not make any sense to me. The bill provided some funding to go NKU's way, so maybe this was a way to sweeten the pot. The Board of Regents had to act by July 1st, 2023. The bill allowed NKU to opt out, and on December 12th, 2022, the board voted not to be involved in this effort. Will legislators remember this decline when it comes to appropriating funds for NKU? The second option in the bill reads as follows: 4 or more local school boards shall nominate 2 each from their boards to serve on a committee that shall authorize 1 or more public charter schools. The wording indicates to me that this board will have an even number of members, another recipe for disaster, along with requiring school board members to actively support funding being taken away from their schools to go to a for-profit venture. The word shall means it has to be done, and according to the language of the bill, this process shall be completed no later than July 1st, 2024. I want to talk a little bit about the bill that was passed. There were over 30 amendments filed on that bill, and the final votes were the House voted 52 to 46 to approve it, and the Senate voted 22 to 15. Obviously not on party lines. Governor Beshear vetoed the bill, and the legislature overrode the veto. I predict that given the outcome of the NKU decision and the furor that will happen when local public school boards are required to divert funding from their local public school boards, it is very likely the law will be readdressed in the upcoming short session. I just have one other thought. Will the upcoming governor's race have an effect on changes that will be made to the bill? And I'll turn it back to you guys for any comments or thoughts you might have.
Yeah, it's outrageous. It just seems ridiculous that they wrote the legislation so specifically and then didn't, as I said in the chat, they didn't do their homework, didn't make sure that, the folks in the institution named in the legislation saw the world as they did in trying to get this thing created and pushed through. And it was such a fight, right? It was such a crazy fight, and they did all this work for not nothing, but not clearly not the outcome, the immediate outcome that they wanted, which I guess gives me hope, really. Like, you can fight these things in all sorts of ways. What do you think, Nate?
I mean, all you have to do is tell me charter school, and already I'm starting to feel a little pukey. I mean, to me, a charter school is just a mechanism for injustice. They don't have to be fair for having students that need extra help, with special needs. And I think in the long term, they're functionally mechanisms for racial segregation. They wouldn't say that, but I think de facto that's the way things are going to play out if they're allowed to continue to proliferate along the landscape. I don't think they have been really demonstrated to be more successful in the long term than public schools. So anyway, yeah, don't like them.
No, it's definitely, but it's all in keeping with the general GOP kind of worldview. It's like, why would you have a public service that's managed for the public good by the public, like public schools, when you can turn to some sort of corporate entity to deliver it and make people money along the way? It's like just this, irrationally capitalistic viewpoint. Capitalism is great for a whole set of things, but it needs checks and it needs balances and it needs, additional supporting mechanisms to make the society that we all want to live in. But that's not the way Republicans view the world. All right. I think you've actually got the next story, so we'll throw it over to you, Nate.
I do. So thank you, Aaron. So what happens when you have a really, really crowded primary race and the format is winner take all, i.e. no runoff elections, in the case that none of the candidates get above 50% of the vote? What you get is a greater likelihood of ending up with a really extreme and outrageous candidate who's won. How? By getting only like 40% of the vote that was technically higher than all the other candidates running. So the case in point in all of our lifetimes is Donald Trump in 2016. Stick with me here. We'll get to the Kentucky news in a second. So Trump faced a very crowded field. And indeed, he didn't start getting more than 50% of any state's primary votes until late April 2016. But because he had been the top vote getter for most of those primary elections starting in February, he outpaced the rest of the pack in electoral delegates until it was basically just, him, Kasich, Cruz, and Rubio. And on April 19th of 2016, Trump started getting above 50% of the vote, and he started basically wiping the floor with whoever was left. Why, Nate, I hear you say, what does this have to do with us here in the bluegrass? Mes frères et sœurs, everything. For you see, it's starting to look like next year's Republican primary election for the Kentucky governor's race will not have a runoff. As reported by Austin Horn in the Herald Leader yesterday, Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, the General Assembly's GOP caucus has not gotten its act together to try to come up with legislation that they could pass when the Assembly reconvenes on January 3rd. And as Austin Horn writes, quote, the filing deadline for 2023 candidates is January 6th, 3 days, leaving little time to pass a bill that hasn't really been debated before session. So in a normal gubernatorial primary with just, a handful of candidates, this may not be a big deal. But guess what? Governor Andy has gotten so under the skin of Republican politicians and, doing it by being a compassionate and competent leader, that this year we're looking at currently at least 7 candidates, counting A.G. Daniel Cameron, Kelly Craft, Ryan Quarles, Alan Keck, Mike Harmon, Savannah Maddox, and Eric Dieters, the last 2 of which, by my humble estimation, are just super extreme wingnuts. And we've still got a few weeks to go until that all-important January 6th cutoff. But soft! What light through yonder mansion window breaks? It is the west, and Matt Bevin is the sun. Yes, for our previous governor, who was so comparatively unpopular with Republicans that he lost his 2019 race to Andy Beshear, is starting to look like a better bet for him to jump in the race. And why not? With so many other candidates running and with more name recognition than any of them, and with the added benefit of actually having, been governor And as previously stated, no runoffs in case nobody gets above 50%. The odds are starting to look much better for Matt Bevin. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little scary to think of Andy Beshear having to run against Matt Bevin or maybe Savannah Maddox. They're extreme and they're nasty folks when it comes to politics. But on the other hand, just look at some of the national races last month in which these super Trumpy candidates lost to much less scary and much more reasonable appearing Democrats. So by not getting their act together to try to squeeze in some kind of mechanism for runoff elections in the primary next year, the GOP supermajority in the General Assembly may actually be helping Governor Andy stay in Frankfurt for another term, which would be just fine by me. Back to you, Aaron.
Wow. Yeah. So I think I do have some issues with that story. I don't know. Like I read it rather, and I was feeling it, but I think it discounts Cameron because of the Breonna Taylor prosecutions, right? That he didn't do enough to go after the cops, which I don't know what primary this writer thought Dan Cameron was running in, but I just don't see that being a big problem for Dan Cameron in the primary. I still think it's Dan Cameron's to lose, no matter how many people jump in there. The fact that he's got Mitch and Trump behind him, I just don't see these even Bevin, jump in, Bevin, that's fine. And people will split it up, but I just really don't see anything stopping Dan Cameron. Who knows? It's easy to talk about, and conjecture at this point is worth absolutely nothing. But I do think it would make sense for them to have a runoff option, but it doesn't really terrify me. I don't know. Whoever jumps in, I feel like they're gonna look like an idiot next to Andy Beshear, right? But I am a little biased in how in my view of Kentucky politics, and even to this day, living here and going through a number of cycles very intimately, the Kentucky electorate still brings surprises. Not pleasant surprises, unfortunately, but at any rate, I don't know, Doug, what do you think about? I know you have a lot of thoughts about the governor's race, but what do you think about this story?
Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts about the governor's race. I agree with Nate's assessment about Bevin maybe getting in the race, and I want to quote Goober candidate State Auditor Mike Harmon has. I think he may be trying to goad him into the race. He says that he thinks there's a 90 to 95% chance that Bevin will enter the race. And Harmon won his race for auditor with almost 500,000 votes. If Bevin enters the race, along with the other, guess how many Republican candidates there are? There are 12 candidates, 18 total, running for governor. And I still think a fellow by the name of Jeff might enter this race. But I don't know. I understand your feeling, Aaron, about Cameron. I don't think he's going to have enough money. I personally think that Ryan Quarles may come out on top. It doesn't really matter to me.
We can watch this. I just think that idea that Cameron's not going to have enough money is he's not going to have Kelly Craft money, right? But if you've got Mitch's super PAC lined up behind you, which he will, if you've got, Trump, I don't know, fundraising around you, he won't get very much money of that, but he might get some, get a percentage of what Trump fundraises around him. But yeah, I would be shocked if money is a limiting factor here. And I would also be shocked if Quarles, figures out a way to, even finish in the top two. I'd say he's probably the third most legitimate candidate, but he's running that old school way of doing it, building legitimacy and getting rural support and whatever. But I just think everything's national now, and who's got the most media attention, and that's Dan Cameron by far.
I think the good thing about it is that those candidates will start. They're going to have to start differentiating themselves from the other candidates. And in most cases, politicians, when they try to distance themselves from other candidates, they don't talk about how good they are. They talk about how bad the person running against them is. And I just hope they slay each other. And once we get to the general election, it'll be smooth sailing.
Well, smooth
Amen.
sailing. I don't know. I don't think there's anything that will be smooth about trying to elect a Democrat statewide in this state, except for the fact that, Andy's got a great track record. And I love that that line you used there, Nate. Compassionate competency. Really, absolutely is something that Andy's, should trademark that. It's absolutely what he's been doing. All right, Nate, any other thoughts?
No, just that I am actually a bit enthused with the notion of an extremist getting to be the candidate. Yeah, I know you're very bullish on or bearish, whatever. You're thinking it's Cameron, but with so many people, could be a lot of wellness.
Yeah, the article lost me when he started. Well, even was Alan Keck might have a path to victory. I'm like, wait, who? Who? The mayor of Somerset, Kentucky, versus the heavyweights that are in that race. I'm skeptical. But at any rate, so they're going to be writing stories like this, breathless stories about the competition for quite some time. We don't necessarily have to bite on all of them, but I do think the fact that they didn't get their act together to figure out a runoff rule, even though they've had one on the books in the past, just shows that either they're relatively incompetent for a supermajority, or I don't know, they just, no one's that invested in the governor's race. They want to make it more rational.
I have one other thought. They convene the General Assembly on January 3rd, and we've noted that the filing deadline is January 6th. So they get there on January 3rd, and they start throwing away all the rules and that kind of thing. They pass a bill that sets up a runoff type situation. They change the January 6th date filing deadline to fit whatever they want, whatever the Republican super duper majority wants. And the governor, of course, can always veto that, but they can override it. So I'm not saying that issue is completely dead.
All right. We will watch. We will watch eagerly. And between now and, when they actually go in, it's all wild conjecture. So you've heard some wild conjecture here, folks. There will be more to come. All right. So I think we're going to move on to our guest, which this is very exciting. I think this is actually the third time that labor hack and longtime friend of this show, former Teamster organizer, current good troublemaker, really glad to welcome back Matt Alley to discuss all the intense activity that's surrounding the labor movement right now, both in Kentucky and then around the region. It's been, as I said in the title of the show, it's been a Laborpalooza recently, and there's been more activity than I can ever remember. The labor movement is, better regarded than it ever has. People are getting the importance of unions at a very fundamental level, and Matt has been, chronicling it and paying attention to it for decades. We're really glad to have him back to share his thoughts about kind of where things are right now. Matt, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I mean, we are in a time where the Gallup poll says we have a popularity rating for labor of 71%. I mean, that is just amazing. Since 1950s, which was 75%, when everybody was enjoying the benefits of labor. That says everything. I mean, that labor is cool again. Unions are cool, and it's a time to strike the iron, let's say, and run with it. Organize. This is a time when you have public sentiment on your side for the first time in decades. So it's great to be alive now and to be doing this. So, and also, just let me throw in something. So my greatest muse, Bevan's back in the news again there. I mean, bring it.
You are not the only person excited about the idea of Matt Bevan running statewide in Kentucky again. Our dear friend Nima also was salivating over the idea that she could be teeing off on that clown some more. But yeah,
right.
Doesn't know when to take a hint. You know?
Well, he loves attention, so bring it, anyways.
Yeah, I wanted to, I've been intending to bring you back on for a bit, but in the past few weeks, this railroad strike, this has gotten, it's like, oh, it was solved, and oh, it's not solved, oh, it's, and I just saw
Right.
today that one of the largest unions actually threw out their president that was, supportive of the deal,
Absolutely.
replacing with somebody a little bit more radical. So yeah, can you break this
Democracy in
down for our
action.
viewers? Like, what's the story and the role of Congress, and what happened in Congress, and then kind of what's your prognosis for the outcome here?
Well, I'm a Gen Xer who grew up, the first news I heard was Reagan and Patco, and also, well, the news of Jimmy Carter and UMWA. I do not like government intervention within labor issues. I mean, I realize there's a certain point, but I love Biden, but not on this issue. I feel like things could have been handled if you'd let the rank and file decide via democracy to what benefits them and what doesn't via a vote. This is a very complicated matter. I mean, you have so many unions involved, and you saw what happened to the leadership of one when the rank and file spoke. So, I don't like government intervention whatsoever. So, right now, there's a lot of it was misconceptions going on. Folks saying, well, they got a raise. But hey, have you ever thought about the fact that so many of the rank and file workers that work for the railroads that are on call right now? I mean, the one day they could go in at midnight, the next day they don't know, and they might get a call 3 hours beforehand and it's 8 p.m. If you're sick, your kid's sick, whatever, do you think you personally could rearrange your schedule or lose your job since you are an essential worker? I really don't think so.
Right. And so the kind of federal government, kind of interceded there because they didn't want to see, the economy collapse in front of the holidays, and, kind of trying to force through an agreement that gave them like one sick day. I think it's like one sick day.
Right.
Then the Senate, some friends of, labor like Bernie Sanders tried to, I think, make it 5 days or something like that, but then they of course couldn't get 60 votes to overcome the filibuster. So yeah, where does it sit right now? What is the situation?
It's just complete well, I mean, I've been reading all of the news, been hearing rumors. I can't really speculate. It's one of those things. I mean, you got what you got. You feel like that you are in a situation with public sentiment at this point, and I think this also shows us the division between progressives and maybe old Gen Xers and above, and I'm a Gen Xer, okay, of the liberal side, because I've heard been like, oh, essential worker is great for the economy. We need them to do this and that. I have seen every industry, including the coal industry, try to be moved into national security and things like that, which is just code for we take away your right to strike. Sorry, but I just have issues if you can't stand up for what's right and to draw the line and say I cannot strike. Our postal workers, I was one at one point, okay, as a casual, not as a full-time. There's something about working a mandatory 72 hours a week during the peak season, that sure, you're making great money, but when you're waking up on a Sunday going, I really want to sleep late, how am I going to cash the check that I made at that point? At that time, there was not direct deposit, okay? And you're like, I have groceries to buy. I have to do this. What if I get sick this week? There's all these complications. You need a life. And to take away that right to strike, to take away that right to collectively bargain for the greater good of the masses versus just the opinions of a few, I've got a real issue with it.
Right. So and I think at this point though they've been kind of forced to take that deal. So okay, so all right, well, I'm sure that there'll be blowback, and there's going to be a lot of, as we've seen, like leadership getting thrown out, and it seems like that is happening kind of frequently. Like there's big fights over leadership. UAW, I think, is having a pretty significant fight over their leadership right now. But that does bring me to an issue that I really want to discuss. Electric vehicle opportunities, right? There's massive investments happening in the United States. Actually, thanks in part to Joe Manchin, the fact that these big auto companies want to take advantage of the tax breaks that are in the Inflation Reduction Act, which means they have to have this domestic sourcing of the vehicles, of the batteries. That means there's gonna be a lot more investment in batteries all up and down that supply chain, which is pretty complicated and new one they're developing. We saw that a new GM EV battery factory in Ohio is going to be represented by the UAW. I also saw that the Blue Oval City construction in Tennessee is going to be, I think, a building trades going to close shop there. Do you have any insights into the Blue Oval or SK Innovation, the twin plants in E-Town, whether the construction of that or the workers themselves? Do you have any? Have you been hearing any rumblings about how workers are going to do in either phase of that facility?
I just asked a little earlier someone that's within the trades, and they weren't sure, but they were pretty sure that a PLA was in place, a project labor agreement. And in those situations, it's usually better to go ahead and, where you have to pay union wages anyways, to go ahead and hire the union workers that are the experts on it was a job and the trade. It does not mean that there couldn't be contractors involved, but again, rumor of the PLA's in place. So even if they're not, they're getting paid union wages. It's going to be up to the workers who actually end up working there. Let's just be clear about this, folks, because there's a lot of confusion about this. Under National Labor Relations law, a new work site will have to be organized. It's not, thanks to Taft-Hartley, it could be the same company that's union, but each new one has to be unionized by the workers, and it's a wait and see situation. But I'm pretty sure that if you're working for Ford and you're looking at, let's say, your coworkers at another plant getting benefits that you're not getting, you will want those too, and pay and whatnot. So I'm sure the UAW is involved in that.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. So, if Ford, say, which has been mostly union, right? Like, because they've got this new facility they're building, they know the rules, and they're going to allow the facility to kind of make its own determination. But, because they've got a more comfortable relationship with labor, and because they've worked with them for so long, it's not going to be something where, a non-labor company that, that's how we do things. So there's not, there's a lot of gray area in how organizing is treated. And corporations can definitely take a more aggressive stance, right? So that's good to know, though, about prevailing wage and that kind of trajectory for the E-Town plants, because those are that's a lot of jobs, like thousands and thousands of jobs that Andy landed through making Kentucky the battery capital of the country, as he likes to say. I'm not 100% sure that's completely accurate, because there's a lot of big investments in batteries around the country, but we've landed a number of them, which is awesome.
Yeah, and let's just hope that they do not end up like Toyota, and Aaron, you know how I feel about them, so
wait, say that one more time.
Well, let's just hope that they do not end up like Toyota, where nobody actually works for the company. They're all contractors through a subcontracting company. There's been investments in the past through prior administrations, but at least Andy is a pro-labor governor, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Yeah. No, Toyota definitely seems like the how not to build a workforce, right? How not to allow people to kind of get the experience and build up their resources and their hourly wage. So, it's still a boon economically, but in terms of how those individual workers are doing, right? They could definitely be doing better under different types of structures. All right, so one final issue, or maybe a couple final issues, but one that's been in the news a lot. Of course, it's holiday season. A lot of people are doing their shopping through Amazon, and Amazon's got a decent, Amazon's got a big footprint everywhere because of just the volume of commerce that goes through that website and through their, you never used to see those gray vehicles on the streets, and now it seems like if you're going through the suburbs, it's like every third vehicle. It's
Right.
crazy, right? So what is the status right now? I know there's been some headway in organizing Amazon in other parts of the country. Have you heard anything about here, or kind of what's the overall status?
Well, there is a current organizing drive going on at CPPG in the Florence area within their hub that they have there. Okay. Which I think needs to get a lot more attention in the future. Currently, the last thing I heard about the independent at Amazon Union, they are trying to get their first contract at the one facility, and I wish them luck. And their lawyers, I hope they are experienced because this is one of these things where we are in new territory. We're an independent union, not affiliated with the AFL-CIO, is trying their hand at the first contract with this megalomaniac, that Jeff Bezos empire, So it's one of those things where it's a wait and see. I'm a little bit apprehensive, as you can tell, because I'm an old labor guy. It's established unions that have been part of the AFL-CIO or changed to win. I know that's an old term now. Those two feds that to see someone new on the block come along, it's not affiliated. I want to see change. I want to see things that work. I realized I was one of those people from my organizing days where everyone didn't like how slow we took things, but it was to make sure all of our I's were dotted and T's were crossed. And that was because if we lost an election, we couldn't go in the very next day pulling a Trump going, wait a minute, I'm going to still try to win this, because you can't do it for 365 days, once you lost an election. It was one of those things where you want to make sure that everything was right. And I don't know the circumstances why they went to an independent union, but it is what it is. And I wish them luck. And Chris Smalls and everybody, you guys are just kicking butt out there. And I hope you can force the hand of Amazon to finally negotiate for that first contract at the one facility.
Right, and then because if they have the first contract, it makes it easier for others to kind of follow suit. But yeah, the Florence facility, you say there's been organizing there. There's been efforts. I've heard about kind of a fired organizer, right? Because it does seem like at this point, Amazon's, they're not Ford, right? They're not like they have an established relationship and are comfortable working with the unions. They are desperate to keep them out and not start that process, right?
Right.
So yeah, anything you can share with us, any stories or links or anything, feel free to send them our way so we can get them out to our viewers and our readers, because I think that's people is Amazon's become a everyday part of life for a whole lot of America. But as you noted, unions are incredibly they're cool again, and I think pointing out just how how the Amazon workers are just getting the shaft right now and need a union. There's a lot of people out there who could be motivated to help support them and speak up and support that effort. So please do share it with us. I know you've got your finger on the pulse of this stuff, and we'd love to be able to amplify that.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then I think one thing that just kind of breaking news that we just heard from one of our board members is that the Outback at Fayette Mall, so the Outback Steakhouse here in Lexington, the workers there have just been getting a raw deal about their tips and moving more employees into the tipped employee category, so they don't have to make even the horrible minimum wage, right? And it sounds like they are going to walk out Saturday at I think 6 o'clock, which Saturday at 6 o'clock during the prime shopping season. That is definitely going to piss off a lot of management at the Outback Steakhouse, which obviously makes me very happy. Because as much as I like the Blooming Onion, I like workers' rights better. But it's not a union shop. It's not an organized workforce. What's the story there? What are they trying to do, Matt?
I would imagine that situation they decided enough is enough. They're pissed off, as you put it. I want to advise, know the rules of your job, and learn them and use them to your full advantage. And where it's not the union shop, I mean, a work stoppage works. Oh my God, it absolutely works. Especially when you know to strike at the right time. Just be careful. I love you all who are doing it because it gives me hope. I'm pushing 50, and this was the stuff I hoped for 25 years ago when I was a very young man, that more people would do this. Begin, know the rules. You have rights, and there's people out there. If you contact us, we'll giving you all the advice that you want, So or point you to the.
So is that a wildcat strike? Is that what that is?
That would be what that is, to a certain degree. But you have the right to strike. But wildcat, of the 70s and 80s would be often referred to if another union shop went on strike and you went on strike with them. It was not the same company. There's differing terms for these things, so you have to be careful with that term, but
well, good luck to them for sure. And word to the wise, if you are shopping and getting hungry Saturday around 6 o'clock, maybe check out the non-Outback options. The wait might be horrible. But yeah, good luck to those guys. All right, so I checked out your Facebook page yesterday because I was looking for a picture to steal to use for our guest card, and I saw, and I'd seen this before and I've been tempted before. You've got some great T-shirts. You're wearing one right now, and just some really wonderful slogans. I think my favorite is that this hell ain't gonna raise itself.
Exactly.
I think but I noticed the T-shirts are on sale right now. So if anyone has got some last minute Christmas shopping they need to do for a radical in your family, or somebody you're trying to get to become a radical, I think head to his website. We can put a link in the chat. And then, I know that you do this work, you're not a labor, or you don't work for big labor right now. Right. You're kind of just extolling the virtues and telling the stories. So yeah, how do you get by? How do you make your way in the world?
I do a lot of advising for media consulting, and public appearances. The T-shirt sales folks, you know what I mean. Pay my Patreons, and also I'm going to be starting up a fundraising at the first of the year. I mean, I know my donate link is up on my website, but for tax reasons, please hold off until the first of the year. And support independent media and things like Progress Kentucky, because there needs to be this out there. I mean, this discourse and voice and talks about things. That if you're waiting for a soundbite from big media, well, look who owns them, okay? Because it's not really going to happen, So you need things like this and blue collar right after labor for media, and every penny matters. So first of the year, you'll be, I apologize in advance. I will be absolutely blasting the donate links and everything else. So, it's there, and we all are working together at a grassroots effort that, we're trying to make change in a different way, that everything's not black and white, blue and red. We understand there's real people out there, and especially there is that, the breakfast table conversation about bills that everyone does not discuss, And this is where these things happen. And also, I want to mention where met, UMWA 7093, that my union, and my dad's union, God love you. A lot's been going on. It's the second year of the strike, and on the UMWA it was website. If you want to donate, there is a strike fund donation there. In my news section of my website, yes, I snuck it in there for for reasons like you read the news and get inspired. I admit my carny on this one. It's there. These people are in their second year of strike, and you have people that are. You have scabs down there in Alabama that they're giving up and crossing the picket line, and we need to keep the support going. The union's doing all that they can. I have friends of mine that I came up with when I was a staff member for the United Mine Workers who were on this strike. Chris, I love you, brother. If there's anybody who can win this, it's you. We need to support these people because they are like, no, this isn't right. We're not giving up. We're not giving in. And with where you're met, they have every reason to be like, we don't care at this point because of the cost of steel that the met coal that they make produces. They're not being hit in the wallets yet. And that's not something that you and I can do by boycotting an Amazon or things like that, But these people want to know that in Alabama, that we care about them, we love them, we support them, and we stand in solidarity with them. Every little donation that you can make to them or just posting something, they see it, they know it, they feel it. These things are important.
Yeah, for sure. So the second year of this United Mine Workers of America strike at Warrior Met, that's a steel mine, right? Like it's I'm trying to
the coal that's made from that. Yes, it would be that. It was the met coal that's made from there that goes to steel. It was production. They are on strike. They're holding the line. It is just inspiring that people are like, you know what? I'm suffering. This sucks. I could give in, but I won't do it. And they're still there, and they're holding the line. And yes, there is some scabs out there. Go to Warrior Matt Truth on. It was on Twitter. I fully support. Pointing out who sells out, and they're there and they're showing that. And just anything you can do from donations of money to just sharing posts for the UMWA. Do it. These things matter.
Yep. And we just put the strike fund for UMWA on there. So yeah, it's that kind of a duration and that staying power that is really inspiring, I think. And I've heard that there's been some overlap between the Amazon organizing in Alabama and Warrior Met, where folks have had to get a job and gone to to Amazon to help them with their ongoing efforts to organize that place too. So really interesting stuff and inspiring stuff. But people are just going through it right now, and people can need the help for sure. All right, well, I think we're gonna end it there. I did want to just check in with my co-host because I've definitely dominated this conversation. Doug or Nate, any questions you want to ask Matt about the labor movement right now, or any thoughts you had that you wanted to share?
No, just I want to once again take my hat off to Matt for all the great work he does, and thank you.
Thank you.
I too appreciate all your hard work. I know that sometimes it feels like it's a losing battle, but you guys, girls, are up to the task, and we appreciate your efforts.
For sure.
We're all in it. We're all in this together, and we have more in common with one another. There is workers than we ever will bosses.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I love that kind of idea that the United States generally looks at themselves as like embarrassed millionaires, right? Like, oh man, we were going to be millionaires, but things didn't exactly go right for us yet, but we'll be millionaires soon. And that's why I really like this idea of low tax rates. And we like, the reality of it is like we should be embarrassed, union organizers, like that we've not stood up and we've not joined a union, we've not stood in solidarity like we should have, because most of us are certainly not going to be the robber barons, right? Most of us are gonna be the folks lining up, either at the strike line, or the folks who are just doing the grind, right? And we should be supporting each other in solidarity, the brothers and sisters, however we can. So we always love to hear from you, Matt, and the kind of the voice you bring to us from the folks who are in those trenches and on those picket lines. And they're always interesting. They're always doing important work for sure. So yeah, again, everyone just watch out. Don't get your bloomin' onion at 6 o'clock on Saturday at the Fayette Mall, but do maybe throw some little cash to the strike fund for the UMWA. Get yourself a cool blue collar rider T-shirt. Again, really good prices right now on the website, so take advantage of those. But yeah, Matt, thanks again. And again, I think you have been on this show at this point more than any other guest.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you're the three-peat there is unmatched so far.
Rightfully so.
And it was a proof I can go this long without dropping foul language, And,
if anyone follows Matt, I hope everyone follows Matt on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, follow Matt. You will be treated to him flying the bird fairly frequently. But yeah, does it only unrepentantly. So
unrepentant.
Thanks so much. All right, and so I guess we've got our action alert that we wanted to close out with. So I thought I'll do that one, and then maybe throw it to Doug or Nate to close out the show. Who wants to?
I volunteer.
Nice. All right. So the action alert this week is a little bit different, but it's very much in keeping with what you've just heard. If folks remember, we have been longtime champions of the newly initiated state representative, Lamine Swan. So we've had him on as one of our earliest campaign corners there, well before the November election. And as folks probably know, Lamine has mobility issues and he relies on a motorized wheelchair to get around. Apparently, the campaign season was not kind to Lamine's wheelchair, and he desperately needs a replacement in order to serve his constituents and navigate the challenging terrain in Frankfort and throughout his district. So we are asking folks to please consider pitching in to a GoFundMe launched by his former campaign manager, Lindsay Parrish. A lot of medical insurance does not cover medical devices, and they certainly don't cover motorized wheelchairs, which are not cheap. So the goal of the GoFundMe is $5,000. And I am sure if everyone who hears this episode kicks in something, $5, $10, $50, or $500, he'll hit that goal more quickly than he'll be able to zoom from an appropriations committee hearing to a natural resources committee hearing in the Capitol. I'm certainly going to pitch in. How about you, Doug? You good for a little bit?
Yes, I've been there, done that. I didn't get the T-shirt, but maybe I can hook up with Matt and get the T-shirt.
Well played.
Awesome. I know that our producer tonight, Annabel, is a fan and wants to make sure that he gets himself a functioning and new wheelchair. So we've shared it out there. We'll put it out on our Twitter. We'll put it out on our Facebook, but it's in the show note. It'll be in the show notes as well. But yeah, anything folks can donate to make sure that Lamine can get around as kind of quickly and easily as he needs to. The guy's done amazing work to get himself into Frankfort. And the least we can do is kind of stand with him as he works to serve his constituents and navigate those halls. So, all right, so that's what I've got. I think that's the show for us. We've got some important points to close out with, though.
We do. Well, we are coming back next week. We will be covering the fight over the Bernheim Forest, which is an incredible spot. Love that spot, just outside of Louisville. And it's in the middle of this controversial effort to force a pipeline across its protected natural lands. It's an important issue. So we hope to see you then. Now, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4. It's affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, that's called CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Production this evening was by the fierce and talented Annabel Nagel. Thank you, Nate. That's me. For the theme songs, you can find more information at my website, natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook, don't you worry. You can rewatch our shows and see our other source links there on Facebook, or listen to some audio podcasts, which are available on Apple, on Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Logo and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. That is it for us here at Kernels of Truth. Until next week, keep the faith.